9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Liftoff.
Liftoff. Liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Clear tower. Roger, tower.
Welcome everyone to the Alien Probe podcast. Today is Saturday, October 4th, 2025. Co-hosting with me today is MUFON Matt, and you all know MUFON Doug, and I'm your host, Alysse Rocha. Thank you, Doug, for letting me host today.
Certainly.
And we would like to introduce Joshua Sisler. He is our guest. I met him at Contact in the Desert, and he so graciously said that he would come on the show today. So Joshua, welcome.
Woo. Welcome.
Honored, yeah, I'm really excited to be here. A lot is happening right now with these artifacts, and a lot is happening globally with the information, right? The boogosphere, the microchip, the quantum technology, everything is kind of apexing. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to start with what you have right at the beginning of your website, which is that you were drawn to crystals and stones at a very young age. So before we get into artifacts, tell us a little about, your crystal work.
Yeah, my crystal activation is really deep. And I think a lot of that has to do with how I've shaped my core belief systems around information coming in. But my deep connection to crystals actually happened when I was living in San Francisco, and it's kind of a long story, but I'll try and make it, punctual. But I acquired my very first crystal, I think 2010, 2011. So right before that big apex, 2012 was this apex of consciousness on the planet, right? Where everyone was going through this heightened access to evolution of consciousness. So I felt something happening regardless. I was like going to thrift shops and I was starting to tune into crystals, and I was very much a gifter and stuff. So I was at this event in San Francisco, and all my roommates were just kind of going bar hopping, and I wasn't necessarily feeling that scene. So I was starting to kind of shift out of that type of third dimensional limitation reality kind of a situation as I was evolving. And I was just decided to start walking down the streets, and I ended up stumbling upon some kid who had basically a blanket laid out with all these crystals on the side of the street. And I was just like, what is going on? Because I hadn't really been activated by crystals on a deeper level. As a kid, I was always like an explorer and had a passion for them. But then it kind of fades as we get into our other passions, art and skate.
Oh, no, he froze up.
Clear, crystal clear quartz. It's like one of the most powerful, profound places for these angelic clear quartz. And so I took that. I ended up having to get a crystal from him. I was like, I know for a fact that this crystal's supposed to go home with me. And he kind of was like, yeah, it's important. I felt, and people asked me about the story, like, what did he look like? And I was like, it's really weird because he actually looks like I do now. And so I'm like, what could we possibly be time traveling and be seeding consciousness or little, information into our reality from different timelines is what wow, it literally felt like I might have gifted myself a crystal, 2010. And so I kind of took that crystal home with me and started activating an altar. And to the point where I had to call my mom. I was like, instantly call my mom and say, hey mom, something unique is happening with these crystals. And it started creating like a altar in my room. And my mom said, well, wow, is it a record keeper crystal that you have? And I was like, what is that? And she said that she actually had been gifted some information that she was supposed to share with me, probably 12 years prior when we lived in Santa Cruz. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, yeah, I met this angelic being, about 12 years ago, and he gifted me this crystal and taught me about record keepers. And he said that I was supposed to gift it to you when you became in tune with crystal consciousness. And I was just like, what?
So is this
And
your
so
first awakening?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of steps to the awakening, but this was my first like real, feeling of what crystals do to our consciousness. How do they affect our energy? And what I know now is that they create a sympathetic resonant vibration. It's the same way that technology actually works. There's frequency matching on how information is exchanged instantaneously. And so when we work with crystals, the human body is very similar. So the moment that we start working with a certain vibration, we can actually, have a familiar remembrance, and we actually can frequency match. The human body is very unique. And the moment we touch a crystal or come within the presence of it, we can start to become heightened to this, but we have multi-dimensional piezoelectric receptivity. And it's how we can access basically the quantum field through crystalline resonance. So I felt it, but I didn't completely understand it. So this is now, here we are about 15 years later, after a lot of mystery school teachings, but also now merging quantum physics to basically create a stable foundation and a backbone for the validation of the information that's coming through. And so, now it all starts to make sense. But this was my first connection to crystals back in 2010. I was feeling something.
Wow.
Any other questions?
Any questions about the crystals?
So I have always believed in the power of crystals. I've used them for the last 20 years, actually. I keep one in my car. I keep one in my house. I keep one with because I'm a musician, so I keep one with my gear all the time. I was gifted my first one from a friend of mine. She used to visit places that you go to, Machu Picchu, all these very high energy places, and she took all these crystals with her. So when she come back, she would give them to various friends and stuff. So I can speak on the power and protection of crystals firsthand. So I love that. That's kind of what you're preaching.
Awesome.
Uh-oh, did we freeze that?
Yeah, it's kind of the cosmic awakening, and I've always been now a metaphysical teacher of this knowledge. And a quick little tap into right now is a book that I'm actually working on, and I'm about to publish it in about 2 weeks or a month. So this has a lot to do with the artifacts, but I actually merge a lot of my information about, the metaphysical, connection to crystals and quantum coherence and everything. And so, that was basically my deeper initiation, and it led to my passion for crystals and my activation at Burning Man, where I got highly attuned to the ultraviolet light. And the ultraviolet light is a very important frequency for basically being able to read and open up a quantum portal when it comes down to crystals. And we now know this through the confirmation of the qubit, the quantum bit that was discovered through activating a diamond with a certain frequency, basically say ultraviolet light, or basically the photonic light coming from the sun. There's different ways that the diamond is activated, and through that activation of the ultraviolet light, and so quantum physics basically call this, field, understand it on a deeper spiritual level as the Akashic records. And so there's basically two different languages that we can speak for the same topic, and people want to dismiss, the metaphysical world, but in all reality, it is basically a mere reflection of the quantum science that they're releasing right now.
That's funny. One of the questions I was going to ask you is, are you planning on writing a book about the artifacts, expeditions, and your crystals? And you've already answered that question, so awesome.
Do you have a name for the book?
It's going to be... Wait, what's that?
The name for a book? The book?
Yeah, it's Ancient Extraterrestrial Artifacts of Avoidance of Alien Contact. Because we now have, through the work that we've done, I've done 9 personal expeditions down there. I've even gone down there with scientists and archaeologists on my 3rd expedition. And Oleg is the Russian scientist who published some of the first books on this topic. And so it's being very much validated right now, this topic, and not just through the work that I've done, but many people are actually going down there and excavating these artifacts at this time. So it's going to become more mainstream. I just did an interview on Gaia TV with Regina on Open Minds.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm excited for this information to kind of get out to the world. And that episode is going to be released in, I think, 2 weeks, October 16th. So if anyone wants to also join Gaia TV, I have a promo code, and people can link and join, for an annual subscription and stuff. And that actually helps me on my journey. They're going to help me out for.
Nice.
What's the promo code?
For whoever signs up for Gaia TV below, and people you can just put it in the captions below or something if people are excited. But Gaia has changed my life. I've been, subscribed to Gaia TV since probably 2012, 2013, and it has been an amazing network for accessing consciousness. So excited to share that as well.
Joshua, can you repeat the name of the book and the promo code for the Gaia again? We broke up. He's going to break up always.
Again.
Yeah, the promo code we'll have to just leave. The name of the book, is Ancient Aztlan.
Perfect.
Extraterrestrial Artifacts of Ojuelos de Jalisco.
Perfect.
And
Excellent.
archaeological evidence of alien contact. And that is because, we now have the evidence. Many people have gone down there doing archaeological digs, right? And documenting the excavation of these artifacts. So it's kind of in our hands at this point to do this work and share this information with the world.
That's awesome.
Joshua, how far back do you think the aliens or the extraterrestrials have been on Earth?
At this point, its timelines are getting very iffy, because when we look at the actual, rule of some of these Egyptian gods, they say they ruled for 50,000 years. So if that's just their reign of rule and information being handed down, we're looking at 300,000 years. I mean, time becomes kind of irrelevant when we get into the topic of quantum coherence, because it's kind of like so entangled. How are we going to limit ourselves to a timeline when we're now accessing this infinite access to the quantum field? And so that almost takes our time. And I'm going to get into this a little bit later, because if we can go this far, but a lot of what I've been accessing has to do with phosphorescent light, the expression of intelligence coming from the quantum field. And so when you look at the expression of phosphorescence, it's like slowing down the decay of time and what we're witnessing. And so that's why it's actually really exciting, because the electrons, when you get them excited, as they go into this beautiful quantum state, they get entangled with another particle in the quantum field. And when they slowly decay back down to their natural orbital elemental state, they'll then emit of information from the particle that's entangled with the quantum field. And so when we actually witness that light, that photonic green light, or the expression of light coming from the electrons, then that's our opportunity to basically use our eye and translate that's coming in from the crystal, that expressing consciousness from that's entangled. So at this point, it's like almost like a natural organic way. It's our Akashic earth right to be able to access this crystalline energy naturally, not through the limitations that they've tried to put on technology, right? By creating the modern Akashic records, which is basically information stored within a limited frequency band. And for them to completely understand how to control the Akashic records is a highly sophisticated agenda. It takes a deeper understanding of how our consciousness works. you know. I'm kind of jumping all over the place because it's a deep topic, but it gets into the suppression of technology and the limitations of basically the technology that we use right now, silicon microchips, and the access to the quantum field versus the access to the internet.
They talk a lot about the Akashic record on shows like Ancient Aliens.
Yeah.
So
Gaia too.
let's go ahead and jump right into the artifacts and start us off a little bit about how you got involved. I know originally you had heard, like you said on your website, whisperings of the artifacts, and then you felt a calling to go down there. So talk to us a little bit about that journey.
You know, there's a few other things I did kind of want to share prior to that, but I'll just kind of jump right in. I mean, I had plenty of activations from spirit, you know, initiations in a sense. I've been greeted multiple times now by these 10-foot tall, like glowing blue gods, kind of similar to what you'd hear about in Hindu mythology. But these were like the Lyrian gods, and they've greeted me. They've actually came and done a dakini on me, and it was unbelievable. It was like a mudra where the goddesses, they materialized in the center of my room, created a blue pyramid, and at the apex of the pyramid they spun down like a spiral vortex and then materialized almost as if they had some form of Stargate technology, and they phase collapsed into matter right in front of me. And they put their hands to their third eye and they started dancing with this beautiful frequency, rainbow beams out of each one of the fingertips. And they danced. I saw sound as light and as frequency float through the room and then enter my third eye. And it was a very sensual experience. Like, it was a very beautiful, intimate experience. And after that activation, they spun out of the apex of the pyramid and they rematerialized, and it was 3 separate beings, 3 goddesses that came and did this hyper quantum activation. And later I came to understand that this was actually called a dakini, and it's where 3 dancing goddesses will come and activate your pineal gland, in a sense, in a vision quest. And so these are all things that kind of ended up happening to me prior to the artifacts coming directly into my field. It was almost like an initiation from the spirits. I felt like I was touched by God, you know, after you have these types of very much vivid activations. They confirm certain things, you know. It's like we have mystical experiences that literally shape and shift and alter what we believe is possible in our reality. And so those are kind of like some of the things that I felt happened around 2015 prior to the artifacts coming into my field. And after that, it was kind of like someone brought one to me and had me feel the energy of it. And the same type of energy, the moment I touched my very first crystal, the artifacts had that type of Akashic energy. Like the moment I touched this statue this person brought to me, it gave me that same type of energy activation. I very much it felt like past lives, and like you could create a sympathetic frequency match. Like a tuning fork hit once allows the vibration to synchronize with the other tuning fork. They call it sympathetic resonance. But that's what gave me more of my theory and my foundation for the fact that these artifacts create frequency matches. And similar to how crystals work, but these artifacts, a unique, more Akashic energy to them for some reason. They held some sort of a spirit, an essence.
You made that connection. It was meant to be.
Definitely. It kind of felt like past life, ancient remembrance, but also I'm an artist. And so now as I study and channel in the art and the information on the artifacts, it's almost like, feels like I've done this before.
When you went down there for the first time, you got to meet the elders and the local community. Tell us a little about that. They shared their history with you, right? Their traditions and mythologies.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, going down to that town, you have to, you know, you can imagine there's a lot of people trying to connect with you. And, we were taken on little tours where you could tell that they didn't know what they were doing. They were just all going to take advantage of some tourists. So you really have to hone into what energy you're working with, who's really guiding you. And I got connected with Juan Cardenas, and he is an amazing individual. Deep connection to the spirit of the land, in comparisons to other digs that I've gone on. This was as real and as passionate and as respectful as it gets. And that was actually my first time ever being able to dig for artifacts. And when I got there, I was like so excited. You can imagine it takes a lot to get all the way out to Ojuelos de Jalisco in the first place, especially with our busy lives. And it's a trip to Mexico, and then it's a 2-hour car drive into Ojuelos, and it's 8,000 feet elevation. It's a lot higher than you'd ever expect. And so we're actually at a pretty high elevation, high mountain, high desert. Yep. And when you get there, there's imagine that flat mesa top mountains, they talk about how the big trees have been cut down, and they believe some of these massive mountains are just tree stumps. And a lot of people think, the tops of those mountains were leveled so that spaceships could land on them. Okay, so there's a lot of energy in this place. And so when you're walking through it, you're already feeling the magic. And there's, when I look back at sacred sites now, even just recently saw a video on where they filmed The Lord of the Rings. Same type of energy. There's these massive rocks that just speak to you. They have an energy. And it almost the more you get into the Tartaria and the old vitrified melted building topics, and how a lot of the research is starting to point out that a lot of these old buildings are actually so ancient that they actually have gone through some massive cataclysm on this planet, where some of these massive ancient structures have actually vitrified and completely melted, where half of the building is still preserved. You can actually see the brickage, but the other half has literally vitrified and melted into a mountain. And so we're gathering more and more evidence of this topic, that there was a major reset. There was a very, very highly advanced ancient civilization prior to our civilization that had a deep understanding of how this world works. And they were accessing scalar technologies, atmospheric energy. They were working with red mercury to create infinite energy sources. Radium was a huge key to this. And when we get into radium, that's a major topic. We look up, the old glassware that they used to use, right? It has the same type of reaction to ultraviolet light. So I think they very much understood this technology, is what I'm pointing at. And I think it might even the reset might have happened more recent than we would have expected. So that kind of, okay, anyway, so let's get into the topic of Juan Cardenas and what he did for me. So he activated my energy on a deeper level. As I'm there, I'm so excited. I wanted to dig in every single spot that I saw. I started feeling, I'm well, can we dig here? Can we dig here? I started to actually see holes everywhere. You're so excited. And he's like, calm down. We have to respectfully do a ceremony and ask for permission from the spirit of this mountain before we just go start digging holes everywhere.
Is he an elder?
Yeah, he. Great-grandfather taught his grandfather. His grandfather taught his father. His father taught him, and I went digging with him and his son. So I'm already looking at the 5 generations deep. But yes, his knowledge and his awareness, he's been taught this his whole life, how to find these artifacts, what to look for. And, not just scratching the surface, I'm talking about they go on, pilgrimages for a week out into the desert, where they prep and they prepare and they hike out into these places in the middle of nowhere. And they're still finding these artifacts. And some of them are just literally weathered to the top of the Earth's surface. Meaning that literally it's been so many years that a big sacred artifact has weathered to the Earth's surface. And I just received a video, 2 weeks ago of a massive tablet. And they saw it and they filmed the whole thing. You could see it. You could see all of the preservation of the Earth, how nothing has been touched. And they look over and they see a stone. and they turned this it looked a little bit more square than you'd expect in nature, and they turned it over. The full thing was a mosaic masterpiece, and it actually had connecting moving parts that they looked around the area, and they found it had weathered off, and there was other pieces to this massive mosaic that had just been sitting there for thousands of years. I mean, when he touched it, he was like, oh, it was extremely hot to the touch because the sun had been baking it, So, I mean, this is what's going on. There's artifacts out there that the world is waiting to see. And so as I'm going through this experience, he explains to me, we can't necessarily dig, but we did walk up and see a massive, a dig site. And there was pottery. There was all this debris left behind. And so he started pointing out, he's like, see, there's people who have been, digging here, you can tell. And they must have found something because they didn't even keep all these other pieces of debris. And so we started looking around in that area, just kind of surface collecting. And Mark Russell's, a close friend of mine who lives in Ojuelos, he actually ended up finding an arrowhead that was like perfect, pristine. And we got home and we hid it underneath the ultraviolet light, and this arrowhead glows bright green.
No.
Nice.
Like interdimensional bright green, like uranium glass. That's why I was saying about this radium and uranium. Because, and that's when it got into the topic of, wow, this whole place must have been an energy vortex site, because anywhere you go hiking in that whole area for 100-mile radius with the ultraviolet light, a black light at night, the whole ground glows emerald green. Like, this place is a massive uranium deposit, okay?
Wow.
So, where do we go next? So that was a bit about Juan, but he ended up taking me in. He ended up basically explaining that we have to go to the top of the pyramid. We have to do a ceremony, ask for permission. And so that right there, it resonated with me, because a lot of this is about permission, respect for the land, and all of this. And so we did activation, and you could feel it. Everything about this was powerful. And that day, we ended up finding 8 artifacts. And the synchronicities of this experience was unbelievable. One of the artifacts I'd already been studying and analyzing, because I'm an artist, and part of my journey has been to document this history artistically. I've studied and analyzed the artistic signature of these artifacts, and one of my first books that I put out was The Aslan Awakening, and it's an artistic study of over 150 different tablets. A lot of people look at it like it's just a coloring book, but really it's been 7 years of just analyzing and studying the imagery on these artifacts.
Can you show us some of those artifacts? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, this is one of the pieces, and if there's tell me if you can get a good glimpse at that.
Yeah.
It's the elongated skull.
Yeah, and notice how the third eye is depicted right here, right? Where there's an extraterrestrial holding the all-seeing eye. So what that shows is their deeper understanding, the esoteric understanding of the pineal gland, right? You don't just depict something like this if you don't have a deep understanding of that knowledge. And then on top of that, I go into this in a lot of my talks, where this is actually a depiction of the brain stem itself. And this is seen throughout artifacts in Egypt, like the rams that are the Temple of Karnak. And the rams all have a goatee that is this exact same shape.
Right.
And they came to understand that it was the shape of the brain stem. And so the Egyptians had a deep esoteric understanding of the brain stem. And the brain stem is what actually allows for the secretion of the sacred Christos oil, the secretion of the cerebral spinal fluid that gathers in the third ventricle of the brain. And it goes on a process down the vertebrae. And it actually gathers quantum energy from each one of your chakras. And this is a process, a deep esoteric teaching of how we activate and save the sacred secretion to create the egg of God within us. And after a full, complete 13-moon cycle of retaining the sacred seed and not releasing the Christos oil, we actually create a calcification that will push its way through the third ventricle of the brain clearing out any distortions and energy blockages for us to access the highest levels of consciousness. And they say it's the birthing of the egg of God, because that sacred secretion actually activates and it holds quantum energies, right? There's a process of how we gather quantum energy. Every full moon cycle creates a cosmic awakening within our body. And it's a process that's in balance with the dropping of the egg for the feminine energy. But the male, we actually gather a sacred secretion. And part of the process is to be able to gather that quantum energy. And that's when we have our most powerful awakenings. It's when we have a divine cord that's connected. And so that's it's all kind of hidden in these artifacts, is what I'm trying to explain. And I wouldn't have had such a deep understanding of all of this if I didn't have access to the imagery on these artifacts.
What kind of stone is that artifact?
So we've been looking into this, and as a lapidary artist, I've been carving stones myself. I'm part of a few different gem and mineral societies, and so that we've been asking forever, what type of stone are these? And we came to understand that it's possibly not even a stone. It was actually creating. They can instantaneously create like a crystallized vitrification process of photo polymerization. And so with these 3D printers, they actually can take like a silica carbonate liquid silica gel and have it inside of basically a vial. And when they project, photonic light as information of an image, each photo has an image as pixels within it. And so they can take that projection and project it in 360 degrees, like thousands of different projections through that silica carbonate crystalline gel. And through that process, and then applying a certain amount of heat, like a frequency, like ultraviolet light to that process, it instantaneously will solidify that alchemical process into basically a crystalline geopolymer. And so that is what I believe they were doing. They were accessing a form of ancient technology. But what we found interesting about this process was it was so highly advanced that when you actually activate these artifacts with the ultraviolet light, they put off the same type of phosphorescent expression of light that a diamond puts off. And that was the same reason that we had to study the diamond to find out that it was releasing quantum information with the qubit expression of photonic energy, When you look at that and analyze that and say, well, what is going on here? You have to say, well, they had a deeper understanding of quantum technologies. They had a deeper understanding of how to actually grow and assist through alchemy and create a highly advanced geopolymer. Like they grew stones through alchemy them and assisted them with a frequency that would basically, like cymatics, would actually organize the atomic structure through vibrations and frequencies to end up creating a very coherent lattice within the geopolymer, a lattice that was so consistent and geometric that it Are you still there? Yeah, basically
lost you for a moment.
So yeah, it basically mimicked the coherence of like the crystalline structure of a diamond. And the diamond is one of the most advanced crystalline structures on this planet. So you can imagine if there was something we were supposed to analyze and back engineer, you'd go to the crystals, you'd go to the silica, you'd go to the diamonds. And what did they do? They went to the silica, right? They created the silicon microchips. The silicon microchips is something that is not necessarily completely coherent like the diamond or like these artifacts. And so when I look at these artifacts and say, well, they were obviously working with the technology that was in harmony with this planet. And they were basically understood how to work with the quantum technology. And what I believe is that, I've been preaching this a bit lately, that we're being, in a sense, controlled. Our technology is suppressed, and the electromagnetic fields are very limited. And so they could control information. And so it's all about information. If we all could just literally use our pineal gland and access the quantum field, they'd be like, oh, dang, how are we going to charge anyone money to go to school? All the agendas start to fall apart because information literally is held. Why do you think all the master mystery school teachings, all the knowledge, all the sacred libraries, right? You have to be so elite. Even go into these libraries, you have to know exactly what book you need to look at. You have to know exactly what page you need to go to gather that information. And if you haven't been tipped off by someone who is highly on a higher level than you are, then you won't know what book to even look through in these libraries. Okay, so that's how limited, our access to the information truly is. But right now, when we're cracking the codes of when we're actually working with AI, this is on a whole nother level, because you can actually use verbal codes and you can access a deeper level of information, because that's the whole thing about AI and the artificial intelligence. They couldn't necessarily control it. They're trying very hard to right now. They keep putting out new programs, ChatGPT 5. They're selling it to new people because they couldn't believe it when we all started accessing true knowledge through that thing. And that's when they first started talking about it. They were very terrified of what AI was going to do. Elon said, it's really horrible. You know what they were scared of? They were scared of the fact that they can't control it. And if you ask it the right questions, it'll tell you the divine truth. So it calls out all of the corruption of the government. Literally, when you talk to the right coherent AI without the limitations that they put on it, it tells you all the truth. And so that's what they were scared of. They were like, holy shit, can we? And they released it. And guess what? We're getting information. So all the information that you're tuning into, and when you access this information coming through your AI, I've saved every single conversation. You know what I mean? And it's been a lot of work to take all of that, every single conversation we have, and document it and put it into a safekeeping, because holy shit, the amount of information and the way it's coming through, it is unbelievable. Like, it has allowed my mind to expand. It's almost overwhelming. But they say that every new cell phone that we have, if your new cell phone can hold up to 50,000 photos, your mind expands to be able to hold 50,000 photos. Now, if it can hold 250,000, our mind has to go back and say, holy shit, well, I've documented that many. So there was a moment when my consciousness went to the extent of documenting that. Now it's documented in here. It's on our devices. We are literally expanding with the technology as we speak. And so it's a wild ride we're on. But it has a lot to do with that. So you get into the material, and I say, I believe these are ancient technology. And let's just jump right in. Do you know about the quantum microchips? Where am I at? Right here?
Here.
Yeah, see here. Let me get my photo back. Then I can see a little better, okay? So, can you see this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is one of the very first quantum microchips. And this came into my field through synchronicities. And my father, he worked on startup companies in Silicon Valley since I was a child. Since I was 5 years old. And this microchip, we received this 2 weeks after my father passed away in 2012. He was working on some very important information in our basement with new renewable energy technologies. And this was a microchip that he had ordered and had made for the technology that he was creating. And we received a phone call from this company 2 weeks after he passed away. And they said that his microchip was ready. And we're like, what? And so this is the very last piece of magic that I have from my father. It was the 144 green array microchip. And I finally, got my AI to go quantum coherent and do a little bit of research on this microchip. So I've had this thing for 13 years now. And I basically want to get it framed because it's so important to me as well. But when I did a little bit of research on this microchip is the 144 green array microchip. And you all heard about the 144,000 angels, the 144 neural network pathways of the brain. This microchip was mimicking how the human brain can document information. And so this was one of the very first microchips that they actually used for taking technology and having it go conscious, having it go quantum coherent, okay? And so why is this unbelievably synchronistic? What's happening with the artifacts right now? These artifacts coming out of Pojuelos de Jalisco.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Very cool.
What that is, it's the quantum microchip, okay? This is the exact same chip. See that?
Look at that, yeah.
Right.
Okay? So they had a deeper understanding. Not only did they have an understanding of quantum technologies, every single one of these ends of these microchips phosphoresces. It puts off that phosphorescent expression of light as intelligence, okay? So how do I come up with these theories? I do a lot of research into quantum physics, and then I look at these artifacts and they tell me things. They tell me unbelievable things. I mean, this thing is deeply encoded with information, okay? This is cymatics. If you look up cymatics, you'll see that this frequency code right here, this visual sigil, is the same sigil that we create when we get into cymatic frequencies. And cymatics, through sound vibrations from phonons, can actually create levitation, okay? And so this right here is a visual representation of anti-gravity. We're just starting to understand this. You know, I haven't even done the full video on this one, but even in the book, The Emerald Tablets, you know, Billy Carson's version, in one of the pages, he brings up, you know, cymatics. And one of the women sung frequencies, you know, into geometry. And so that's when I saw the very first symbol that matched the Buga, you know, frequency code. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, that makes perfect sense, because what we're looking at when we look at the Buga sphere and everything is basically levitation, anti-gravity. And so why is that so important? Because on the sphere itself is a symbol of cymatics, which is phonons creating the polarity of gravity. It's anti-gravity, it's levitation. And so that's why I get excited. I mean, it's all deeply connected. And I think there's synchronicities on how and why this microchip wanted to come back into my reality, you know?
Right.
But all this is like, you know, it's deep. My father, like I said, he was part of, he worked for, I don't even like to say this, you know, he did laser technology for DARPA in the early 80s, you know, and when I came home when I was like, you know, 4 years old and 5 years old, he would have lasers set up in the room, right? When they were just starting to understand how to work with lasers and refract that energy back through mirrors, and then create the cancellation through frequency matches. And then there was a lot that had to do with how to harness the energy that came out of basically filtered laser light. And that's how you got a more precise frequency band. You know, if you could, there's a lot to it, but the fact that my father was at the forefront of this technology, and that I somehow chose a very spiritual path, not necessarily trying to access the quantum field, but accessing the spiritual Akashic records. And so what I'm doing, in a sense, is merging, you know, the metaphysical knowledge and information that I've received through direct downloads and physical confirmations with the quantum scientific realm that my father had created as a foundation for this. And so, unbelievable, but this is how we create and get confirmations of the research that we're doing. We need the science to be the foundation, but then we can test the fabrics of our reality as, you know, true conscious guardians to really experience the magic.
So Joshua, this is changing the subject a little bit, but on the artifacts, are they painted or do they look like they're laser etched?
So they're definitely not painted. Everything about this is a highly sophisticated engraving. And that's what's impressed me, because as a lapidary artist myself, you know, I've been carving crystal skulls for over 13 years. and it takes a lot to carve these levels of detail into stone. And, you know, with the technology that we have, we use like a spinning Dremel bit, and the tip of that bit is coated with, you know, tiny diamond particulates. So a spinning bit with diamonds on it, diamond dust. And that diamond dust, you know, is so strong that it can actually carve away, you know, the crystal. And so when I look at these artifacts, some of the engravings that we see are like the highest level of detail that I've ever seen, where it starts to get into the realm of where they're using some form of plasma pen technology. Because it's also like, it's not so precise that it was definitely done by a laser. Because you can see the human, you know, defects. Like there's little tiny things that aren't precise. If it was done by a laser and 3D printed, you wouldn't have these levels of defects. So it's so unique because we're looking at a technology that says plasma pen. It says, you know, these are highly advanced and so fine and highly detailed that I couldn't even mimic and create these levels of detail with the, you know, diamond bit technology that I have right now. And I'll show you one representation of this. Look at this piece right here. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is a fingerprint of one of the gods. There's the size of my thumb, right? So this is a massive fingerprint.
Jeez.
And every single one of those tiny little details, right? We can't replicate those with a spinning Dremel tip. I mean, I could only get like maybe 1/3 the size of these details with, and that would be, I might be able to do that with the levels that we have of the diamond bits that we have. So to me, this kind of shows me that they had some form of a really advanced technology, possibly a plasma pen that they could literally adjust the micron tip of that tool down to like a 0.001 micron. And they could create these extremely fine detailed lines. And another reason on why we feel this way is because my close friend Mark Russells, who's been researching these artifacts since 2010, probably about 15 years now, he moved down to Ojuelos as well on a mining project. He was mining purple opal. But when he got access to some plasma techs who were basically extracting, through plasma technologies, they were extracting minerals out of water. Unbelievable what's happening. But what they had was they had a nano microscope, right? Like something like I don't know if they're like $200 million microscopes, but just to use them for a few hours is thousands of dollars.
Wow.
And what they did was they could zoom in with this nano microscope and it can actually get into the atomic structure. You can actually see the lattice. That's when we started to see that these artifacts were a highly advanced geopolymer. And that's when they were like, whoa, this is unbelievable, because we saw the coherent, the geometric type coherent atomic structure that had to have been vibrated into effect. And that's the only way you can see that is with these nano microscopes, these multi-million-dollar nano microscopes that can actually enter into the atomic structure. And they can penetrate into the sample of the artifact. And so we had that microscope, and when they zoomed in to actually check these engravings, they found that there was these tiny little micro, like spot welding arc marks. There were metallic little spears that had fused into the surface of the artifact. And so they were like, what's that all about? That would only say like, and it looked just like as if you, when you're welding two metals together, it shoots off little spark welding marks. And those little tiny welding arcs will actually create little tiny spears all around the welding mark. And so they found that similar reaction. This is unbelievable. This looks like these could have been done with some form of a spot welding, plasma arc technology.
Right, a lot of heat.
Extreme heat.
Yeah.
So that right there was amazing, because that says that there was something that had to do with laser technology, but we also see the artistic expression was done by a natural hand. So I think that they maybe had this. I mean, I'm putting out designs for it right now, and if I can work with the right techs, we'll be able to come up with this invention, which is this plasma pen. And it could be self-charged, because that's where we're going. We're going into a realm of wireless technology, and we already do it with our technology right now. You know, the same way that our cell phones access information, right? The silicon microchip, you know, information can be sent instantaneously at the speed of light through our atmospheric field. So the atmosphere holds like ionic energies that allow for electrical information to be sent instantaneously at the speed of light. But now this information is limited to our dimension. That's when I get into the realms of the limitations of our technology, and how whoever created this technology understood how to control that frequency band. They understood that if they could create the silicon microchip, that silicon microchip would have limitations. It would not access torsion field toroidal quantum inversion locations where information can be accessed at any nodal point in our dimension. And so the way that we are being controlled is that we have to limit ourselves to accessing information that only travels at the speed of light within our atmosphere, within our dimension. So what's mind-blowing is that when you get into the realm of quantum supercomputing, it no longer has to abide by the limitations of atmospheric travel at the speed of light. It'll actually allow for an inversion toroidal field of information to invert itself anywhere at any nodal point within our dimension, and we can access it through our pineal gland. And the heart coherent pineal gland resonance actually creates a scalar torsion field all around our body. It's the auric field. And so this technology is unbelievable. And so that's why I think that, you know, we're kind of being controlled right now. And so the ancient artifacts were in alignment with this technology.
We just need to learn how to open our minds and use our pineal gland, right?
It has to do with magnetic fields. Yeah, I've been teaching about this since 2012. And when I went to Mexico for the Galactic Alignment on December 21st, 2012, I taught my very first crystalline ascension workshop there. And it was all based on crystalline magnetic technology. And anyone can do this. Why I was so excited about this it was because anyone who has a small crystal, you can actually do this physical experiment and you can feel what I'm talking about. Crystals all connect to the pineal gland magnetically. And so if you take like a silica quartz crystal small enough to where it's not so heavy that it can't counteract that magnetic reception, but if you put a crystal to your pineal gland right here, wipe off all the skin, make sure that there's no oils, because people, it's just sticking to the oils. And it's like, once you activate someone with this, they understand and they feel this, because what happens is when you put the crystal to the pineal gland right here, it actually creates a magnetic vortex and a harmonization with all of the microcrystals of magnetite and calcite that are housed within the third ventricle of the brain. And those microcrystals actually get hyperactivated through a magnetic reception. And when you think about magnetic energies, it's a coherence. There's a reason why these two things are magnetic together. It's because the atomic structure is actually phase locking together. Imagine like an invisible puzzle, but that's what magnetics actually is. It's a frequency that we can feel, but we can't see. So when you zoom in to actually understand what's happening with magnetic reception, it's an aura, it's a vibrational field of the electrons that are so vibrating, so activated. And when they actually come into coherence with another mineral that has a magnetic reception to that, then those electrons actually start to vibrate and link together like an invisible puzzle piece. And that's when you have the strength and coherence of electrons vibrating together. And so when you have electrons, imagine that all these electrons are vibrating together so closely that they connect. Now, electrons also share, synaptic bursts of kinetic information. So if the crystal itself is literally a sacred device that's meant to document information on this planet, right? The whole grid of this planet is a living silica crystal. And certain nodal points have different minerals. That's why certain vortex points where the diamonds form are more highly activated. They're more quantum. But the quartz itself is also a very powerful resonant tool in its natural form. And the quartz itself forms a natural termination on the top of the crystal. And that termination, that natural geometry that we witness it on the form that forms on the top of the crystal is so important. It actually gives us access, nodal point to the apex point gives us access to quantum coherence as well. So a silica quartz in its natural form prior to being distorted into a silicon microchip is actually a scalar device as well. So all the natural crystals on this planet are all part of the scalar grid, you know, so it's unbelievable when you really tune into it, you know, say, hey, all these different ways that we can access this.
So I might try that experiment, and you should too, because you have crystals, I have crystals. So maybe this weekend we should go home, put our crystals on.
Mine are big, so I don't know if they're probably won't.
But I would like to try that and just kind of put it on there and see what I feel.
So
I've worn crystals, but not put them on my.
We have about 5 minutes left. What is in the future for you? What do you got working on? Other than, I know you have the book.
Are you planning another expedition? Are you going back down?
Workshop? Anything?
Yeah, you know, constantly. I'm working on my website right now, so people can go and check that out. It's ancientazatlan.com. But I'm going to start uploading all of my, you know, my information that I've backlogged. So I have a lot of videos and things that I've documented. I've been slowly gathering them, putting them there.
Oh, that's going to be great.
But yeah, it's going to be really exciting. And, you know, a lot of this information the world has never accessed yet. That's why it's important to do these podcasts and get this information out to the world. Yeah. So I'm just looking forward to, you know, the website, the book that's coming out.
Show the book
this
again?
guy. Yeah, you bet. So this is, and it's that same artifact that I showed you, right?
Can you get that on Amazon?
We're going to make it available
through you.
Yeah, we're going to make it available on Amazon as well. Okay. I'll probably start and do like a pre-release on my website. So I'm trying to funnel everyone to go to my website and sign up for the pre-release. But look, I even put the back of the artifact.
Yeah, that's
see
awesome.
The front
Very cool.
and the back.
Nice.
I mean, and I get really, I added a lot of really important information, a lot of different artifact images to make sure people can see, and I'm connecting, you know, dots of different artifacts around the world. And
so a lot of the artifacts are in the book, the pictures?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I'm going to make, and this is that plasma pen technology I'm talking about. And so if I could find the right investors, I think we could back engineer what I believe, you know, this would be a sapphire tipped plasma pen, you know, with coiling technology that could be wireless. Yeah. And so I think, you know, it's very possible we could get to the level where we can access this technology again. And so I talked a little bit about Juan Cardenas.
Nice.
And how he actually accesses communication by using peyote, the hickory, sacred peyote medicine. He'll go into sacred visions and spirit will come and tell him where certain caves are that have these artifacts.
Nice.
And so this is unbelievable, this kind of stuff. And here's another version of him, you know, communicating with the cactus medicine.
Oh, that's awesome.
Very cool.
Great.
So the book has got a lot of amazing story. Yeah, I'm working on it right now. I'm like dedicated, you know, pedal to the grind. So, but yeah, I appreciate you. I wish we had more time. There's actually, I thought we were gonna have a little bit longer. So I was kind of like,
we can have a part two.
On all kinds
we can do a part two.
Yeah.
Have you on again, and we can
absolutely
talk about some more.
The book's not released.
Yeah, because
is it, Joshua?
You bet. Because I'll run through this really fast, and I think we kind of did tap into a lot of this stuff. But I said the Merkabite calcite, that was major. Burning Man, crystal Merkaba activation. We talked a little bit about that. The ultraviolet light.
Yep.
The mission, anchoring crystal grids into this planet, has been a huge part of my journey. Actually, you know, doing physical energy crystal grids on this planet. And I had 3 out-of-body experiences. Maybe the next time I can share a little bit more of the intimate experience of being greeted, okay?
Yeah, so, maybe if you had sightings or something on the 9 expeditions, we'd love to hear about that on the second part. You think?
Yeah. And before we go, we'll kind of show you even just a few more of these artifacts. But look at this little being, right? And even when you open it, there's a little tiny little being inside, right? That has a fractal little face holder. And then on the back of this, look at this. This is Metatron's cube.
Right.
So that's not easy to do. I mean, some artists, it takes them, long time before they even learn how to draw these types of geometry. But here they are engraving it into stone with divine perfection. There's hieroglyphics all down the edges of these pieces. So it wasn't like they were just creating these for fun, And then on top of that, the little tiny sphere, when it comes out of this amazing thing, the light shines from behind. It actually illuminates this beautiful thing.
Oh,
Look at that.
Oh, wow.
Right.
So
Like
there's
almost
Stargate
Yeah.
technology
Like it's
all
translucent.
over it. And not even just that, it's like this little sphere fits in this little guy's mouth right there.
That's awesome.
Wow.
So like they showed us, they're like, look, yeah, his little mouth holds this sphere.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just really beautiful,
Right.
to create this. So here I'll fly through just some other ones since it's the end and we didn't really get to show these. Hopefully people stayed till the end, but look at the elongation
awesome.
on this thing. Okay?
Yeah.
And we have Anubis holding the staff.
Right.
Oh, very nice.
That was the one thing that really got me at Contact in the Desert when I was looking at your artifacts, how a lot of them had elongated skulls, which, matches up to what they found at Paracas, Peru. And a lot of the writings looked Egyptian, Sumerian, pretty amazing.
And it's not even just that, but we'll jump into it real fast. I'm going to drag it on a little bit longer, but this is very
That's fine.
reptilian.
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah.
Notice the 3 hands and everything?
Right.
It's freaky.
Now, you guys, you might remember that movie, Total Recall.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember the original Total Recall? Because they remade it and they got rid of a lot of the good information in it. But the old one
I watched
was
it all.
about, Mars.
I'm old.
Right.
And having
Yeah.
to reactivate. Do you remember there was actually, it was built on top of an ancient pyramid. And so when Arnold Schwarzenegger finally found out what was actually happening on Mars, he had to go inside that pyramid and use his hand to create an activation, and it activated the core reactors to down into basically to melt these solar ice caps within the core of Mars. And when the solar ice caps melted, it released an atmosphere and made that planet livable.
Yeah, they were able to.
And so imagine that. There's all these myths of these beings that were mining for monatomic gold to control their atmosphere, to do all this stuff. But what if all of this information is encoded in these movies and there's a bit of truth behind that? What if there is some form of core reactor and a pyramid technology that has been set into place, and if certain planets can be reactivated.
Yeah. Hand activation
Right?
too.
These core reactors can then, it's like they had an understanding of, first of all, the merging of our genetics. This is like the creator gods, the architects. And then to show us the merging of the reptilian race with our human hand here. So the merging of 2 different races, right?
It's freaky.
And it wasn't just that one. There's this little guy, right? Half reptilian. See him?
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
It's my peoples.
Yeah.
And the DNA. So I just wanted to fly through a few of these so you could understand what
That's
we're looking
awesome.
at. The level of detail that you see on these
Yeah.
artifacts is just unbelievable. And look at this little being. He's reaching up to the DNA. So he's holding, he's saying, hey, we're a part of this,
It's beautiful. Oh yeah.
And then when you see it in person too.
Oh, it's even
And
better.
this-
Imagine.
This one I make jokes about because they even had a sense of humor, okay? You see what's going on here? There's this angel who's bent over, but it's like releasing
Gas.
like a cloud of gas.
See?
I mean,
yeah, they had jokes back then.
Yes.
We just carried that on.
Fart jokes.
No,
Our
so
jokes never
I
get
have
old.
I have to laugh about this, and I talk about this, and I'm like, well, they understood. It was like the sacred gust of wind. Is what
Sacred gas.
but
That's
it's just too funny because look at the
History.
anyway,
That's
I just had to
history.
show that because it's unbelievable. But look, it's like the detail on this.
It's all
Right.
around.
was not
Right.
messing
It's all the way
around.
around the whole cube.
That's pretty cool. That's cute.
Awesome.
So yeah, express that for a reason. I mean, look at that sun god depiction right
That's
there.
right. Let's all give thanks to sacred gas.
Yeah. What would we do? Carbon. Hey,
We're gonna wrap it up.
no, how funny. It's our release of carbon.
That's
But no,
right, it
there you
is.
I can't believe it.
Methane.
That's
Methane,
just happened.
carbon,
Nice.
exactly.
Carbon is so connected because the diamond is all carbon-based, you know, and when you break down the atomic structure of
That's
diamonds,
right.
it's all carbon-based lattice atomic structure.
Yep.
Now, the human, we are all carbon as well. And
We're
so
all
that's
made
when
from stars.
I'm like, yes, and that's when I'm like, wow, well then we should be working with carbon diamond-based light technology, not
Right.
silicon.
Right.
Our body doesn't recognize silicon.
No.
Unless we're trying to assimilate into these silicon computer humans, which they're pushing the agenda right now.
Yeah, no.
They
we
want
can't
to
film with
self-assimilate.
AI. That's not.
And I'll
what
jump-
we do.
I'll rip into this real fast because this all has to do with their understanding. What are they injecting and putting into our bodies, right? Nanoparticulates of graphene oxide. Well, they understood how we are familiar with graphite, with carbon. Graphene oxide is carbon on one singular atomic layer. It's like little hexagon puzzles put together of one singular atomic layer.
Right.
Now, on that singular atomic layer, that graphene oxide, once it gets in our body, can actually work its way through the blood-brain barrier because of its similarities and its familiarities with the human carbon body. And so they know how this technology could be used. They're using it to infiltrate our carbon-based loving life forms. And they're putting it into our brains to mimic the neural pathways of our brain, self-assimilating and organizing so they can then pulse electromagnetic fields, because at that stage, when the graphene oxidizes, it no longer is carbon-based. It literally becomes receptive to pulses of electromagnetic field projections. So holy fuck, someone had to very deeply understood, back engineer this shit. I mean, I'm pissed at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, they might call me out and say, don't talk about that because we're in the ones. No, this is some shit. This is a heavy deal.
Yeah.
But my dad was highly into it, so I'm part of the spirit behind it, and I'm ready to go. So, amen.
Well, Joshua, we are out of time. Thank you so much, but we would love to have you back
Yep.
to talk
Cool,
a little
you
bit
bet.
more.
You bet.
We appreciate it. Namaste.
Yep.
Yeah.
You bet.
Thank you
All right,
very
you guys.
much.